Harlequin from 1980 is an Ozploitation movie that somehow eluded me as a kid, as I'd scour the video store shelves in search of horror, exploitation, and B-movie goodness. But this one is directed by Simon Windsor, who probably is most memorable for being the director of the ill-fated Phantom adaptation starring Billy Zane. But the main reason to check this one out is screenwriter Everett DeRoche, who is something of an Ozploitation renaissance man. He wrote some of the best Ozploitation movies of the 70s and 80s, films like Long Weekend, for example, and Patrick, and Race for the Yankee Zephyr, just to name a few. He's also done a ton of other great Australian movies, written a lot of great Australian television as well, and really is the reason that you should check out Harlequin. So Harlequin itself stars Robert Bloch as a bit of a Svengali, bit of a faith healer, bit of a Rasputin type character, I guess you'd say, called Wolf. So we've just seen a situation where a very high-ranking politician has vanished while skin diving, while spearfishing off the coast of Western Australia. And many of you in Australia will find this scenario quite familiar, because we did lose one of our prime ministers in this mysterious way, a guy called Harold Holt, which is the stuff of legend, and one of the rare cases of a sitting prime minister or president literally vanishing in all of history. I don't know if it's ever happened before or since. But the movie takes its cues from that real-life experience, the disappearance of Harold Holt, Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt. And we have the next in line for this politician, who is David Hemmings. And David Hemmings, of course, is the guy, the Paul McCartney lookalike that some of you might remember from Dario Argento's Deep Red. He's also appeared in quite a few Ozploitation movies. Probably the most notable one is Thirst, which also had Henry Silva. But here he appears as basically the next in line for this the job for this high-ranking politician. I believe he might be a governor who's vanished in the waves off the coast of Western Australia. But David Hemmings has his own issues. He has a son that we see early on in the movie with leukemia. And both David Hemmings and his wife are suitably worried, suitably devastated, and so on and so forth, as you would be. But something interesting happens during a children's party for David Hemmings' son. A party clown, appears on the scene. And this party clown is actually a faith healer, a Rasputin type character, a Svengali played by Robert Powell. And Robert Powell, personally, I always remember Robert Powell as the narrator of Great Crimes and Trials of the 20th Century, which is a true crime documentary series that kept a lot of us awake, or helped some of us get to sleep late night during the 80s and 90s. But he stars as faith healer Wolf, and basically he sort of ingratiates himself into the family by healing, or seemingly healing, David Hemmings and his wife's son of curing him of leukemia, where all conventional medicine, all conventional care has failed previously. So he makes quite an impression, becomes part of the family, even ingratiates his way into David Hemming's wife's bed, because they do have something of a marriage of convenience from what the movie tells us. And basically this movie is a kind of a reworking of the whole Rasputin story. So Rasputin, the mad monk, who also was a bit of a faith healer, a clairvoyant, and so on and so forth, who ingratiated himself to the Russian Romanov family, of course, and the Russian royal family, and eventually saw a fairly violent demise during a power struggle during the time of the revolution. So the Rasputin story's been done before, of course. Hammer did a version of it called Rasputin the Mad Monk, I believe, starring Christopher Lee as the titular character. But Harlequin, even though it sort of didn't make any major waves when it was released, as I said, it's something that I sort of skipped past as a kid when I'd see it in the video shop. It always looked like a bit of a musical or something like that, judging from the video cover. So I was never inspired to rent a copy, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one. But it is worth checking out, well worth checking out, because it is a brutal takedown of politics and political systems and political machinations and things like that. It pulls a bit of a bait and switch. It indicates that Wolf, the clairvoyant, early on it indicates that he's the most sinister character in the movie. He's the villain. He's the mad monk of sorts. But we do soon learn as these all of these political lackeys, these political power brokers, kind of come out of the woodwork and realise the influence that he's having. They kind of reveal themselves to be the true villains of the movie as it all unfolds. And it does go in quite a different direction than you would expect purely from looking at the posters from this one or reading the synopsis to it. So it is quite a clever political satire in its own right, as well as being a fun little Ozploitation movie. So, as I said, written by Everett DeRoche, who wrote Long Weekend, and he also wrote Patrick, of course, and movies like Frog Dreaming and Race for the Yankee Zephyr, and a heap of interesting television over the years. And he really was a cornerstone of Ozploitation, along with the producer, Antony Ginnane, of this one and many others, who was kind of the Menahem Golan, or the Globus, the Canon Films, I guess you'd say, of Australia. He used to fill a similar sort of role in the Australian film industry ecosystem. A lot of these Ozploitation movies were kind of tax breaks and things like that. Didn't necessarily matter if they didn't make a lot of money at the box office. That wasn't always necessarily the end goal at the time. The Australian government at the time had some awesome tax breaks for filmmakers, for film production companies, and that's how we saw a lot of these wild and crazy Ozploitation movies being made here in Australia. And in my opinion, it was the golden age of Australian cinema. All of these cool Ozploitation classics before Australian cinema kind of devolved into a pretentious, boring, lackluster hodgepodge of sort of identity politics and art house pretension, and really just stuff that nobody in his right mind is interested in seeing for any reason other than trying to virtue signal or signal some kind of status. And that's the only reason that most of Australian cinema exists in 2026, or at least what's left. So I guess if I could ask anything of the current government or of the next government, It would be great to bring these tax breaks back so that we could see a bit of a renaissance in Ozploitation cinema and the kind of movies that are real and genuine and interesting people, not only in Australia but around the world, like to watch, like your good selves. So Antony Ginnane, he really did create this cool Ozploitation universe. These kind of movies are perhaps even more interesting for all of us here in Australia than for you guys overseas. And the reason being that when I was a kid, travel, of course, was prohibitively expensive. And these movies always looked a little off. They were Australian, but they weren't Australian, if it makes any sense. And the reason being that Antony Ginnane did shoot a lot of these movies in and around Perth in Western Australia. And to those of us on the East Coast, to cut a long story short, Perth and Western Australia was, and I guess it still is to an extent, like another country, like an alien country. Perth and Western Australia might as well have been halfway around the world, because geography-wise it almost is halfway around the world. So these movies always looked like they did occur in an alternate universe, because Perth is, Western Australia is wildly different, of course, geographically and culturally. And the cool thing about all of these Ozploitation movies is that they did kind of give the effect that they were occurring in some parallel dimension. And I truly believe that that's one of the reasons why they continue to be so popular, not only here in Australia, but around the world, because I can imagine that if they look like they're shot in a parallel dimension from a 13-year-old kid as I was in New South Wales, then I'm damn sure that they probably looked like they were shot in a parallel dimension if some kid in Maine or Kentucky or Worcester or, I don't know, Mexico City, Alberta, saw these movies back in the day. They probably did look quite alien indeed, and I'd be interested to hear comments from around the world. Generally your thoughts, not only on Harlequin, but on a lot of these Ozploitation movies, on why they captivated you, what your thoughts were on them, what you made of them as well, because they are a completely unique aspect of Australian culture that were definitely of a time and a place, and unfortunately probably won't ever happen again unless we see those kinds of incentives for filmmakers to bring Ozploitation back, which we have seen to a tiny extent with Netflix and a few others. There was the recent movie Apex, of course, which I reviewed on the channel, and that one is a bit of a love letter to Ozploitation, so it does really go along the right sort of track. So Harlequin, for fans of, I guess, political thrillers, political intrigue, or anyone that's cynical about politics and has a pretty good idea of basically how most politics these days, or all politics, is an illusion, much like the illusions crafted by Wolf in Harlequin. That's another bit of social commentary. It's all a bit of a facade. These people, of course, don't represent the constituents. They're basically elected lackeys of private equity and of foreign interests and things like that, which I think we're all well aware of now. And it's something that transcends party lines. They all do it. They're all in on the grift. And I don't think any of that will ever change, but it is important to watch something like Harlequin. And Harlequin is one of those great movies which does kind of sneak into the subconscious, posing as an Ozploitation thriller, but then it does make you ponder a few of these concepts about, I guess, the knives out situation of politics, and the fact that politicians are quite often more villainous than the alleged villain of Harlequin, the Svengali known as Wolf, who, let's be honest, he's not exactly a hero in the movie. He's not a sympathetic character, but the interesting thing is he's actually probably the least villainous villain in the movie, if that makes any sense. And he has nothing on the political power brokers that are depicted in Harlequin. So this one's a cool, very cool reimagining of the Rasputin story, the Mad Monk. A lot more effective than other adaptations of the Rasputin story, I guess you'd say. A lot of the other ones are very superficial, I guess, whereas this one delves more into the power structures of what had happened in such a situation, and also explores the awkward fact that Rasputin, even though he was this dark historical figure, this sinister historical figure, as we saw from the events of the time, he no doubt wasn't exactly the most villainous person in the whole situation, purely by virtue of the Romanov family being executed in cold blood, including the children, and Rasputin being executed in cold blood. And a lot of times things like that get glossed over, and we see one person portrayed as the villain. But when you think about it, the firing squad executing the family, the power brokers executing the family were infinitely more villainous than Rasputin probably was. And the same goes for the villain in Harlequin, Wolf, played by Robert Powell. And although he is this sort of sinister Svengali with his own agenda, obviously, his own axe to grind, as we find out as the movie progresses, there are more villainous factions in real life than in the illusionary world of magicians and clairvoyants and Svengalis and faith healers. Those people are, I guess, snake oil salesmen and grifters in their own right, but Harlequin does teach us that the real pros are the politicians. So I hope you've enjoyed this look into one of the more obscure Ozploitation movies of the 70s and 80s, one of the more interesting ones. I'm kind of glad in a way that my eyes skipped past this one at the time when I was a kid, and that I instead was watching movies like Road Games or Dark Age or Long Weekend or Turkey Shoot, movies that probably appealed more to me as a kid than Harlequin would have. I can tell that I probably would have turned this one off after 5 or 10 minutes if I'd watched it at the age of 13. But I do find it quite compelling at the age of pushing 50 now. So, yeah, it is a cool one to check out. I checked it out on Brolly, which, if you haven't checked out Brolly, if you are in Australia, or if you can convince your network, your ISP, that you are in Australia through some nefarious means, Brolly's well worth checking out, as in my opinion, one of the best of the streaming services, if not the best. It's up there with Tubi for value for money, purely because it's chock full of the kinds of movies that we all enjoy, and it's virtually free aside from a few ads, but you don't get anything entirely for free. So I do prefer these streaming services that are free with a bit of advertising than the weird extortion of ponying up to watch these movies. Of course, physical media is always the ideal situation, and I I wouldn't throw out your DVDs or Blu-rays or VHS just yet, in much the same way as I wouldn't throw out your CDs or your vinyl just yet, because a lot of these streaming services are taking the piss, taking the proverbial, worse than ever, and we'll see a lot more firewalls, for want of a better word, I think, in between you and being able to watch movies that you want, or listen to music that you want in a fair and equitable manner. So it is important to, I think, for all of us to hang on to our physical media. But that's getting off track a bit as I digress. That was Harlequin, starring Robert Powell, and directed by Simon Windsor, I believe. As I said, the director of The Phantom, starring Billy Zane. I think that was his only notable thing that he did. And it certainly wasn't as good as Harlequin. So, yeah, be sure to check out Harlequin if all of this sounds of interest. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it the thumbs up. If you hated this video, give it the thumbs down. It's good to get some feedback either way instead of shouting into the void. And if you are enjoying these videos on a regular basis, by all means, like, share, and subscribe. If you have any thoughts on Harlequin or on Ozploitation in general, especially those of you overseas, I'd be keen to hear your thoughts in the comments. That's always good to get a little bit of feedback. And otherwise, I'm off to enjoy the rest of my Saturday. Quite a productive day of content creation this morning. I upload these videos about once a week, time permitting, sometimes more. Sometimes a lot more, sometimes a lot less. But life gets in the way, so there'll always be something new on a fairly regular basis. And if you do subscribe, you'll be the first to know. Otherwise, hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I'm off to enjoy the rest of mine. As always, take it very easy. Stay safe and know that you are appreciated.